dissatisfaction with democracy is at a record high. It's taken a bit of a study to work this out, Mike, because of course we know that our MPs are simply a law unto themselves and are not following what the voters want them to do. But here's the headline. So democracy's breaking down. And they say that democracy within developed countries is dissatisfaction with democracy within developed countries is at its highest level in almost 25 years. Now, don't worry, because this, of course, has come from independent University of Cambridge researchers. So these academics have analysed what they say is the biggest global data set. They mean a database when they say that, don't they? Yes. Data set is a nice way of saying we've been running a vast database on attitudes towards democracy based on 4 million people in 3,500 surveys. The UK and the United States have a particularly high level of discontent, so I'm sure they're happy with that. Well, who's the key man from this article? It's this one. It's Dr. Roberta Foer. And what's he got to say? Well, words of wisdom. Across the globe, democracy is in a state of malaise. We find that dissatisfaction with democracy has risen over time and is reaching an all-time global high, in particular in developed countries. So he's smiling at the thought of more consultancy because it's all breaking down. Therefore, who's going to be needed? Do have a look. Here's a bit of his CV. So he's working all over the place. The University of Oxford. He's been involved with Harvard University, and this just caught my eye, which was the Electoral Integrity Project. I always like seeing the word integrity because we know we can trust what's happening. Well, here's the project, the Electoral Integrity Project, and if we bring in a bit of a detail, it's independent academic project based at Harvard University and the University of Sydney. The EIP project is directed by the founding director, Pippa Norris. We'll have a look at Miss Norris in a minute. And it's been generously funded by many foundations and partners. And what are they going to do? Well, when do elections meet international standards of electoral integrity? What happens when elections fail to do so? And what can be done to mitigate these problems?
Good.
So that's all good. Let's have a look at the partners. Well, so many people, so many different interests, but this one caught my eye, which is Open Society. So I think we know where some of the major funding will be coming from. But here she is. This is Pippa Norris. She's certainly independent because she's worked at the UN, UNESCO, NDI, the Council of Europe, International IDEA, the OSCE and the World Bank, as you do, Mike.
And the National Endowment for Democracy, so that's effectively the US government, and the UK Electoral Commission.
Yeah, but she's produced a massive number of books. She's doing all this work, but it's all to protect our democracy and make sure that our vote counts, Mike.
Yes.
Okay.
Good.
So what was this one, the International IDEA? I just had a quick look. Here it is. Basically, it's an Institute for Democracy and Electoral Assistance. It's an intergovernmental organisation that supports sustainable democracy worldwide. Sustainable.
Good.
But if you look at their founding document here, this is a statement, a declaration made in 1995. Interestingly, it says that the concept of democracy is that it grows from within and from below rather than being imposed from the top. But it's very weak, and each generation has got to look after it. So their own statement says it's not sustainable, but now it's going to be sustainable, and these independent people are going to help us achieve that. Personally, I don't trust it.
Yes. So the question is, who is this organ? I mean, why was this published now? And well, it's quite interesting because the reason is that this organisation at Cambridge University is being launched today. This is the Centre for the Future of Democracy. And they said democracy as an idea and practice generates a lot of heat. The news cycle is filled with reminders of the dangers apparently bearing down on democratic politics, low voter turnout, media bias, populism, the rhetorical or practical subversion of democratic norms and institutions. And they're going to say these suspicions and fears may be justified or they may not, but the only way to find out and the best way to start thinking about how democracy might flourish in the future is to understand the long-term structural conditions that give rise to democratic life, its institutions and practices, successes and failures. That is what the Centre for the Future of Democracy intends to do. So as I say, this organisation being launched today at Cambridge University. They apparently are going to initially focus on 3 strands of research. I'm going to focus on the first one. Here it is, democracy and climate change. In conjunction with the work being done by Cambridge Zero and the Centre for Science and Policy, we will be exploring how different forms of democracy can engage with the politics of climate change. The particular focus of this project is on the relationship between technical problem solving, including geoengineering, and deliberative democracy. Can expert science and democratic engagement mix? Now, the question is, what is deliberative democracy? Well, if we go to Wikipedia, don't use that as a source terribly often, but we've gone to that today. A form of democracy, so deliberative democracy is a form of democracy in which deliberation is central to decision making. It adopts elements of both consensus decision making and majority rule. Deliberative democracy offers deliberative democracy differs from traditional democratic theory in that authentic deliberation, not mere voting, is the primary source of legitimacy for the law. While deliberative democracy is generally seen as some form of an amalgam of representative democracy and direct democracy, and so it goes on. So it's generally seen as some form of amalgam of representative democracy and direct democracy. And of course, this is exactly what is being proposed by the Extinction Rebellion with citizens' assemblies. So here we have a change in how we're governed being linked to the climate change issue. That's being promoted by Extinction Rebellion. Now it's being promoted by the Centre for the Future of Democracy at Cambridge University, and of course the same thing being promoted by Keir Starmer, who is the likely next leader of the Labour Party, who said at the weekend, we need to empower people to have a real say in the workplace and the communities they're part of and over the public services they use. Now, Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, but I would have expected that in a democracy, a representative democracy, which is supposedly what we've got at the moment, we elect our representatives, and those representatives would deliberate on the policy that they're going to pursue and deliberate on the implementation of that policy. You would expect some kind of deliberation, would you not?
I think I would, yeah.
So clearly this is not the model of deliberative democracy. I'm having trouble with that today. Yes, that the Centre for Future Democracy intends to pursue. This is another organisation which is going to pursue this sortition-style model of.
So, without any consultation with the public whatsoever, behind the scenes, a whole new model of society is being put together, which is being done in a very deceitful way. So these people in their actions, I have to stick on deceitful. They know what they're doing. Who's controlling them? The average politician hasn't got the brain power to come up with these schemes. So we've got to be looking at these Soros and other hedge fund-backed think tanks to come up with this agenda.
Right, absolutely. And of course, it all comes down, if we're thinking about some kind of deliberative democracy and some kind of jury-type system in order to come to decisions about how we govern ourselves, of course, that's on the basis that the jury, the Citizens' Assembly, is given all the information that they need in order to make a decision. If you have a controlled press, if we bring ourselves right back to the beginning of this program once again, if we have a controlled press, or a government-funded press, or a government-supported press, which is allowed to run a monopoly of information, then that becomes a very difficult situation to have people making decisions on limited information.
Limited and controlled information.
Absolutely.
Delphi technique. We better end there, but what are we seeing? We're seeing a rapid movement to close down in the United Kingdom. Free speech is being taken out and our system of constitution and law taken apart. and it's being replaced by something nobody is being consulted on. How do we stop it, speak out, get writing those letters, and start holding your MPs to account?